All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Good afternoon. Welcome to the 311 Synergy webinar. My name is Cheryl Jones, and I am the 311 Operations Manager for the City of Dallas. And just a quick overview on the 311 Synergy Group. We are an industry networking, I need to change the slide, I think here, sorry. We are an industry networking group, and we're located on LinkedIn. There's a lot of information sharing, a lot of education, and we have a lot of fun together. We learn a lot from those of us who are part of the 311 Synergy group. It is open to all municipalities that have an interest in 311. So if you haven't already joined the 311 Synergy group, please do so. Our 2015 chairperson for this year is Rob Duncan. He's the customer service manager out of the city of Austin. We also would like to remind everyone about the annual meeting, and the next annual meeting will be April 26th through the 28th of next year, Charlotte, North Carolina. And there's 3 days that we spend prior to the actual CS week, and it's a lot of information sharing and exchange. A lot of us have benefited from it, the 311 Synergy meeting. But there's a lot of communication that's available as well on the 311 Synergy group website. Today our webinar is titled, Is 311 Right for Your City? It's a great information sharing for those cities who are considering a 311 service, as well as those who already have 311. We have Rose Minton, President of Heights Consulting, and she is the first presenter. She'll be providing, or she provides consulting support for the 311 Synergy group. Many of us have worked with her. Corey Fleming will be our second presenter, and she is the Program Director for ICMA for the 311 CRM, Technical Assistance Services. And like I said, many of the current cities with 311 have worked with both of these individuals, and they have a wealth of knowledge and experience with 311. Just a few quick notes. You can upload questions in the Q&A panel. Please remember to do that to all participants so that everyone gets them. And the webinar recordings as well as the PDFs will be available later on this afternoon on the CS Week website in the 311 Synergy webinar location. And with that said, I'll turn it over to Rose.
Thank you, Cheryl, and thanks so much for putting together this webinar and accepting the position of the chairperson for the webinars this year. Cheryl and her team have already scheduled the webinars throughout the year, and they have some topics, and they're always looking for some help with people that want to speak or provide input about topics and that sort of thing. I'm coming to you today from the lovely city of Denver, Colorado, where we will have a high of 75 today. And I'm saying that because Corey is in Maine in the middle of a nor'easter. So just a shout out to Denver. I don't live here, but I'm happy to be here today. I wanted to take 311, is it right for you, from the perspective of, you know, at the beginning, you need to figure out why you're doing this and if you have the support to do it. I'm going to go with vision, strategy, and some lessons learned, and then Corey will take you through a very robust methodology and talk to you about lessons learned also from her perspective. And I do apologize, I have to drop off in about 23 minutes. I have a standing conference call that I need to be in, and I'm sure we can get through this. And if not, Corey's going to be taking questions and answers, and you can always directly send your question to me. I have the contact information noted at the bottom of the slides. So I think you first need to clearly understand what your objective is, and that means working with the people in your municipality from the top person, whether the top person is the mayor or the top person is city manager or a general manager of a county, whatever that top is, I think you need to start there in defining what your objective is. Because if you just launch into a project and you haven't gathered input from all of those that will make decisions and ultimately fund a 311 initiative, then I have found that it causes a lot of backtracking. If you get your objectives set up, and then here's some sample drivers set up, what is driving this initiative? Whenever you have hard times having to make a decision, you can always go back to your drivers and say, okay, what we're trying to do today, it is not in line with our drivers, and take it back to what they said originally. Update it if necessary, but using clear, crisp business drivers is a good way for everyone to keep on the same page. I provided some sample drivers here, but for instance, one of the first projects I worked on for 311, I was there implementing a customer information system, and the team for that was pretty much put on the back burner because the mayor of that city had gone to a council of mayors or wherever they go, and he came back and had named implementation of 311 as one of his 6 initiatives to get reelected. So he decided, he provided the resources, he provided the money, and provided the date we had to go live. So that was a very important driver. And by the way, those projects that are driven from the top down like that, they tend to be very successful because it's clear. There's no going around and around about what you want to do, and if you want to do it, you get that direction, you get that money, and you go. So that was an interesting experience. The other thing is you can try and predict if you're a likely candidate for 311 by looking at your monthly contacts. And that's typically a pretty big job because as I go into organizations, they don't necessarily track their contacts. They don't have the technology, they don't have the process in place. So it's typically grassroots effort. It starts at the bottom. You use whatever technology you have. And I often find that as you present what's currently happening at the municipality, the executives or the positions that will be making the decisions about this project, they have no idea about the contacts coming in. And they have no idea about how many of their customers are not being served the first time. So for instance, in this project, they had about 245 contacts coming in monthly, and then 14% of those were directed to another department. So that meant a transfer, and there was no idea if, you know, they got resolution because there was no tracking. But when you look at that in terms of real live constituents that were not served the first time, in this case it comes out to about 412,000 that have to be directed to somewhere else. And we don't know if that's multiples that are being directed. So that's a necessary and a good exercise to go through so that you understand the magnitude of your problem, if in fact you have one. So that's an initial exercise. And then finding out about processes. Is there problems with current processes? I mean, sometimes you'll find they just need a little bit of improvement, and sometimes you find that there's a lot of work to be done to get those processes in place so that you can best serve the customer. So what I'm presenting here is not, it's pretty much the standard as opposed to the places that are looking at 311 and figuring out if it's right for you. Once you assess where you are today, and I've given you a few examples of how to do that, then you can take a look at where you are today and what you want your customer experience to be tomorrow. And as you're doing that, it's always, again, it's involvement from the CSR level, from the field level. It's involvement all the way up to assistant city managers. People need to buy in into what they want. They get a good look of what it is today, and for some of them, it's the first time they've ever gone through an assessment process, and then they get a clear idea about what they want tomorrow so that you can begin planning in earnest for your project. So I just had a couple of pages of that. And then finally, I wanted to talk about lessons learned from other cities. And there's a lot of lessons learned out there. And as you know, the 311 Synergy Group is a great place where you can talk with others and put a name to a face and then begin reaching out. So what I did is collected some lessons learned from about 4 cities. And I just wanted to talk through those and how it relates to your project. Drive the project from the top, and I just can't say again how essential that is. If you don't have a champion at the top and they aren't ready to stay fully engaged, then what I typically find is you'll have a lot of stops and starts to your project. So unlike the project where the mayor dials back and says, we're doing 311, go, I have other organizations that are still in process taking long breaks as they determine, okay, where's the money coming from? Is there anybody that's going to get the money for us? Is there anybody that's going to champion this 311 initiative throughout the total city? It comes to mind, I have a couple of current clients that have had changes at the city manager level, and that shut down the projects until they recruited and got the new person in there and validated that that person wanted to go forward with 311. And so there's all kinds of things that had happened. But if you can have a clear, consistent leader, that is, in my opinion, by far the best case scenario and a very necessary point that you need to have. The second, a clear vision and scope, and I talked a little bit about that at the beginning. Probably your organization is like many others, and not everybody agrees what should be in, what should be out, what the timing should be, and that's not unusual. But getting that vision and scope statement very, very clear on the front end with multiple iterations of going back and gaining agreement for people, that's also critical. If not, you'll get down the line and, you know, somebody wants to throw something out or include something at the last minute. And if you'll go back to your scope and your vision, it's best to work through it using those documents so it doesn't become personal. It's not about the individual. It's about what we agreed to for 311. Not only in kickoff at the very beginning, but keeping those executive or political sponsors engaged is critical, because you'll go, first of all, they'll want status. They'll want to know how you're doing. And then when you do have some kind of a opportunity to work through problems maybe the project is having, those folks are the ones that can advocate for you and perhaps get different resources. And so they're also the ones that, as city leaders, promote 311. We see city leaders as they're moving towards the implementation that they're talking with community groups and they're mentioning it often and creating expectations and bringing back information to the team that they might have gathered while they were out talking to citizens. So that's critically important. Develop a city culture that will ensure the success of 311. Change management is so important because this is not implementing a telephone number. This is not getting a centralized software system to support. This is changing the way you do customer service. And so it's not about the technology. It's not about do you have a 3-digit or do you have a 10-digit. It's all about a huge shift in the way you do business and the way you serve your customers and how you treat your customers. Do you want them to have a great customer experience, or do you want them to continue to struggle to contact your city and maybe be transferred one or more times, or maybe call back many times in order to get a problem resolved? So it is a really tremendous culture change. And when I talk about engaging people, it has to be end users early on that are part of this process. I just spent a lot of time talking about the folks at the top, but it also has to be end users. They'll have the best information about truly how the customers are being served and about which processes are broken. And I just want to say as well, I talked about the top and at the bottom with end users, but also your middle management is so key because they'll be the ones accountable for implementing and for tracking and creating accountability. So a big challenge that you need to be sure that you pay attention to is the change management. City staff at all levels, whether they're involved directly with the project or not, you need to keep them in the loop, the city attorneys, anybody that will be doing contracts. So that is critical, and also providing updates to those folks. If we find some issues, which we know that we'll have, begin to track those and provide feedback about what you're doing about those issues. Team collaboration is important. It's like any other strategic plan that you do. You have to have a strong team, and you have to have a team that will collaborate and move the project forward. I've always found that the projects are most successful when you identify a point of contact from each department. And also I found that those folks are the ones that provide information into the project and the ones that take the information back out to share with their departments. But going forward, in terms of communication and updating, et cetera, they're also the ones that would be your contact going forward. So I typically establish a process, excuse me, to keep those folks in place and meet on a regular basis, because if you don't, then your good intentions will probably just fall by the wayside. About the project, the budget is critical. Many times I see people kicking off and they'll state a number that's very understated. And once you say a number, it seems like everyone remembers that number. So you have to be careful about stating numbers early and do your work to make sure you've gotten correct information for all of the departments that will support this, and buy-in from them about, why you're collecting this information, what the impacts will be to them in terms of the budget, and use real numbers. I've never found it helpful to understate it and then have to go back for more. And this is a project. You need a project manager that's not working, as many of you have to do on multiple projects, in addition to doing your own job. And getting this done, this is a big job to get done, and so it has to have a project manager, a comprehensive project plan, because you're keeping many different areas going, the people, the process, the technology, the facility. There's a lot of moving parts and pieces at the same time. Defining common terms to use in the project, I think that's important because across many cities you'll see that many departments call things differently, and so early on in the project, beginning to establish that common language is very important. Defining your requirements, again, you can't give somebody a number until you know what you need in functionality, what inputs, outputs, what common data, what you're going to use to support that. So that's critical as well. And then volumes, I talked about that before. What you typically find is that you'll have a decrease, so you'll have a volume number, let's say 1,000 calls a month, and I'm just making that up. Well, if you're not transferring 14% of those, or some number, you know, we'll have to transfer 4% and handle the rest of those, you can decrease your volume by that. But then you need to account for an initial increase in the 311 because you'll be more acceptable, and so people will use that more. But we found in trending over time that'll happen for the first year, 18 months, and then your volumes will be very, unless you're having programs or initiatives, your volumes will be pretty steady. And even in some cases start to decrease a tiny bit if you're directing things towards self-service. Interface and reporting requirements, one of the things that Corey will talk more about is how you use the information that's gathered for accountability. So you need to know what reporting requirements that there are, if you need to interface or find a workaround for those interfaces. You need to figure that out before you get too far down the road in the planning process. Have a realistic and achievable timeline. It's just hard to slam these things in. You're dependent on your project team, your employees, your vendors, just going through the process of getting the 311 number. I've been working the application process for a city I'm working with, and the telephone providers or service providers, they're not in a big hurry to prioritize that and get that filing going. And so don't underestimate how much these things will take, how much time it'll take. Prioritizing departments for inclusion or exclusion. We find most folks today don't go with a big bang where the whole city goes at once. So you can develop some, as I typically do, a readiness criteria. Do they have enough volume to make an impact? Do they have people that are willing to support the initiative? And are they a primary service request that you want to improve immediately? So don't let people opt out for reasons that are not good. But on the other hand, if you have people in your city, and I know you probably don't have this happen, but you have a grumpy person that's just not going to go along with anything ever, probably don't put them in the first wave, because you want people that are cooperative and want 311 to be a success. And with all the departments you need to assess and work with, you probably don't need to take the dissenters in the first wave. It requires technology, CRM. Do you have your ACD updated? Do you have your website, etc.? And I think you need to define what you're going to get. Some places have said that we're going to skimp on facility and we're going to skimp on some other parts of this, but we'll absolutely buy what we need for a CRM. Others have said we'll go with a very less robust CRM, and then down the line we'll go out to bid and get something that really will support us in the best way. So no matter what that decision is, if you can't afford what you have a clear workaround plan, because you need to simulate processes that will support 311 whether or not you have the technology to do that. So give that a lot of attention. Develop and implement a plan to work after the project. You're probably not going to end the project until you've gone through different phases, and so you'll do the first phase of departments and then keep it going. How are you going to update the knowledge base? What is the check-in point for evaluating technology? So keep that plan going and have the process owner accountable for that plan so that you just don't put it in and then it doesn't get the care and feeding it needs to be successful, the 311 initiative. Staff with good qualified people and contractors for the implementation. People just don't have time in many cases to leave their full-time jobs, and so you'll have to augment that with contractors. And if you do, then be sure you have a plan to transfer that knowledge. Training is critical at launch. Have to be fully trained not only on the system but on the processes. Staffing 311, many cities have found that when you do new hires that come from a call center profession, they're call center professionals, you have a better result than taking someone that's worked in a department for many years and is not used to being tracked on how many calls they take and how long it takes and the quality of their initiatives. So some people are not able to do that, but if you could, new hires are a great benefit. And then an ongoing plan for training and communication is also vital. I've listed some qualitative benefits, and you all know about those. And the quantitative, I want to talk about a little bit too, even though I had the slide mislabeled. Sorry, goofed up here. But anyway, you can get quantitative benefits and you can demonstrate a cost benefit or avoided cost analysis. A lot of cities shy away from this because they have to have their managers that are disciplined enough to improve those practices and redesign those practices through the use of the 311 initiative to eliminate unnecessary costs and operational efficiencies. And for some cities, that's a tough pill to swallow, and so they're not that interested in putting all this down on paper about how many years is the payback? What are those things that will enable me to get a payback? But it is very possible, and I think it's very helpful for the team whether or not your management uses that. So I apologize. I need to sign off. I know I've gone through this very, very quickly, but we do have these resources posted back. We will have them posted back at the CS Week site, and you can check on those. And also, again, the offer to contact me directly. I talk with people all the time, and I'm very happy to do so. And I'm very happy to have been your presenter today. And I'll now turn this over to Corey so she can say a few words about me plugging Denver's beautiful weather.
Teresa, am I on now?
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you. Very good. Well, hi, everybody, and good afternoon. And as Rose did say, we are in the middle of a nor'easter here in Maine. It's about 52, and it has been raining cats and dogs all day today. So I'm just a little bit jealous that she's in Denver. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about centralized customer service systems and why you might want to consider a centralized customer service to begin with. When we look at this diagram here, this could be any street corner in any city across the U.S. or Canada. And as you start to look at the number of different things that a citizen could potentially want to talk to the city about, it becomes a very complex piece of equation, I guess. There are 16 different possibilities there. Now, most citizens aren't going to know which department that they need to go to or contact for something like that. And so centralized customer services systems actually become the front door to your local government and help direct people. Just to give you a specific example here. There we go. Let's take the issue of a tree. A citizen has an issue about a tree that they want to report. Well, the question is, where do they report the item? Are they, do they have a Boy Scout troop that they're wanting to plant a tree in the park? Is there a problem with a street tree in the downtown area that it needs some kind of care? Do you need to pull in solid waste to take a tree away, or branches that maybe fell during a storm, a nor'easter like we're having in Maine right now? The point is that most citizens don't know where they need to go for the issues that they have, and they don't want to take the time to go through those blue pages in the phone book to figure out who they need to call. They want to call one number and get their issue resolved. That said, sorry, I'm waiting for technology to catch up with my presentation here. There we go. A lot of people tend to think about 311 CRM systems and or other centralized customer service systems as a switchboard. And I want to assure you that, no, we are looking at a centralized customer service system. As Rose pointed out, this is a very different way of doing business. So what are some of those key differences between a switchboard and a 311 call center? Well, first of all, there's first call resolution. What we're trying to do is eliminate people having to be transferred 5, 6, 7 times before they find the right person, or to leave voicemail messages that are never returned. We want to have the customer service experience resolved on that very first call. And you can do that, call agents can do that with a knowledge base of frequently asked questions. Most departments have a series of calls that they have come in on a regular basis. By developing scripts for each of those and knowledge and a grander knowledge base, those people the call agents can handle those questions on that first call resolution. Another thing I like about 311 systems is the fact that they issue a tracking number for service requests. So if you have a light bulb that's gone out on a street light, or if there's a traffic sign that's down and it takes a while to get it done, you've got a number that you can call back and say, hey, I reported this at this time. Can you give me a status update? What's happening? When is the problem going to be resolved? That kind of thing. And then lastly, they are a really important source for data collection and analysis. The systems generate, you will know more about why your citizens are calling, what their needs are, what their services are that they want. It's a tremendous resource for managing your departments on a day-to-day basis. This slide, and I apologize for the graphic problems that we're having on the next 2 or 3 slides. But this is one community that we worked with a while back. It's a small community. Saco is about 16,000 in population. And when we first went in there to work with them on developing a centralized customer service system, what we found is that the departments were operating very much in a silo fashion. They would get a phone call, they would resolve it, and go on to the next thing. But that resulted in a series of questions that they couldn't answer. And the series of questions are actually behind the star diagram there, but just to give you a sense of some of the questions that are, that they weren't able to answer is, has the problem been resolved? How was the issue resolved? Are other teams in the department, for example, let's say somebody called police about damage done that was in a local park. Maybe graffiti was done. Did the police department coordinate with the Park and Rec department so that they both know what the response was in developing this? So 311 systems help you answer this series of questions, which will be in the PDF after this event. What I want to take you through, as Rose mentioned, is a step-by-step process. This is just one process. It's one suggestion, but I think it's important to know a little bit more about each of these steps and how you get to that, is 311 right for our city or not? So let's talk about some of these steps. These first two steps here, preparation and kickoff, I probably could have combined into, one bullet point and called it research, that you need to do your research. The reason I didn't, first of all, with the preparation piece, I think it's really important to have a standing base of knowledge before you go forward with this. A few years ago, I had a tourist community in North Carolina call me, and they were just wanting to transfer all of their calls to 311. They weren't setting up any kind of database any kind of knowledge base to answer the questions. They were just going to have their town receptionist start taking these calls. And that probably would have worked in the winter when they had 4,000 people there, but in the summer they had 40,000 people there. And can you imagine one receptionist handling all the phone calls that might potentially come in directed to 311? I told the city manager there, I said, do you want to lose your receptionist? And so just knowing how 311 works and what the different elements are can begin to tell you, is this something that's good for us or not? The second piece there is the kickoff, and I think kickoffs are important because they help create buy-in. I think it's important for local governments to understand that everybody needs to be involved with this process. It's not just underneath the city manager or just underneath the public information officer or, whatever department it ends up in, but rather this is an enterprise-wide thing, and everybody has a vested interest in making sure that the 311 CRM system is functioning the way it needs to in your community. The next piece here is just begin to define your system requirements. Rose talked a lot about the importance of developing a vision, and the system requirements play into that vision or take from that division. Recently, and let me just give you a case example here. Recently, I purchased a new car, and what I defined for myself is I knew that I wanted something that was reliable. I knew that I wanted something that was a lot more fuel efficient than my 16-year-old Subaru, and I wanted something that could carry my 17.5-foot sea kayak on it. Those are the kind of things that you're going to want to begin to define for yourself based on the vision of how you see 311 CRM system working in your community. What features, what functionalities do we need in order to complete that vision? The next piece here is the data collection piece, and Rose talked a little bit about that. Part of what you need to do is develop that as-is scenario. What's happening in our local government right now? How many phone calls are each of the departments receiving? What types of phone calls are they receiving? Are they receiving information requests or are they requesting service? Also know what other communication channels your public is using. Are they texting? Are they emailing? Are they using a mobile app? You need to have a good understanding of what's coming in, what kind of contacts are being made from your citizenry, and then analyze those as the next step so that you can understand where you're at right now and begin to use that to plan for the future. Okay. Interviews. I think it's very critical, again, for buy-in and creating ownership within the whole of local government, that you talk with people from the executive managers all the way down to the frontline people, including the middle managers, just as Rose was commenting about. Doing these interviews are going to tell you what people know about the system or what impressions they have of the system, what their expectations are of the system, and what are their concerns and pain points. If you have that kind of information ahead of time, you can begin to design an education and communication program that addresses those issues and makes people more comfortable with the new system. As Rhoda pointed out repeatedly in her presentation, this is a change management process in addition to being a technology initiative. Citizen focus groups, I think, are another important step to consider. Your citizens, both active and non-active citizens, should be able to tell you how they want to communicate with the city. Do they want mobile apps? Do they want to be able to text? Do they want to be able to do web chats? All of those kind of things. And then also, what types of information are most important to them? there's a lot of the 311 CRM systems out there right now that not only are they taking information in from citizens and providing them with, the hours to the public library and, some ideas of when code enforcement work is going to be done or things like that, but then they're also using the opportunity to push information out via Twitter and other social media. So, for example, in Louisville, Kentucky, a few months back, they were having a shredding day where they were making the city's shredders available so that people could bring in personal documents and have them shredded. That's not something that I would typically think of as a service provided by my local government, but having that information out, I know I would have planned to be available for that. And then the last step here is looking at the, brainstorming and planning. Again, going back to Rose's vision, what could a system do or would do in your community? How do you want this system to work? Are you just wanting to provide better customer service, or is there an opportunity to do performance management and see how you can improve systems within your local government? And then finally, after going through all of these steps, you get to the results and you get to the go, no-go decision. Is the 311 system going to work for us or isn't it? Just some final things that, just a few slides to wrap up here, looking at the time here, because I do want to leave time for question and answer. One of the big questions that we always get is on cost, and that's part of the reason that I was trying to define for you the requirements piece. Do you want a Volkswagen or do you want a Lamborghini? And what are the important pain points, the important features and qualities that you want for your system? Just to give you an idea of some of the options you might want to be considering, are you going to have an online self-service form so that people can reach you 24/7? Mobile apps, are they going to be part of the picture? There are a lot of cities that are using an IVR, an interactive voice response system, in order to direct questions and get people through systems faster. Are you going to try and adapt a work order management system that already exists, or are you going to go with a new customer relationship management or a CRM system? The other thing you need to consider is what communication channels, again, do you want to use? And what is your goal for the contacts coming in here? This just gives you a quick rundown of some of the current technologies, and certainly technology is changing all the time. I know visual voicemail, which translates, somebody's message into a text format for you, is one of the things that's coming along. So you need to consider those communication channels. And in considering those communication channels, you need to consider what the cost is per transaction. There's a lot of people that like walk-in, they like the actual face-to-face contact with people, but it's kind of an expensive way to do business, whereas, web self-service is a lot more affordable. So another question that we get a lot is, where should the customer service system reside? These are just a few of the models that are out there. There are other models as well. I think the more important thing is to have people understand that this isn't owned by that department, but rather it's an enterprise-wide. It involves all of the local government organization. And as long as there's that sense of ownership and people feel invested in it, where it resides is a matter of preference, I think, for the local government. This is just some of the decision factors that would go into where you would want to locate such a system. I do want to quickly talk just a little bit about mapping your processes and your procedures, because I think this is one of the biggest and most important areas where a 311 CRM system can add value for a local government. This is where you're going to realize your cost savings. There are an awful lot of local governments that have processes and procedures that aren't recorded anywhere or aren't documented anywhere. And so when an employee leaves or retires, that information is gone as well. By capturing that information for the knowledge base, you don't lose that corporate knowledge when that person leaves. And you can also begin to develop systems that are more effective. And what do I mean by more effective? Well, I think people need to look for CalPass. If you go onto any campus in this country, most of them will have CalPass because people want to get from point A to point B as quickly as possible. And that's what we want to do with our business processes, too, is get people to that ultimate customer service experience as quickly as possible. Just some points out here. I think looking at where there are bottlenecks and other inefficiencies as part of this mapping process, I really want to encourage local governments to design their business processes from the outside in, not the inside out. In other words, the driving factor needs to be what is the customer service experience you want your citizens to have when they come in, whether it's for whether it's for getting a permit for building or for registering their car. How do we want that process to go for them, rather than having it be designed by whatever easiest for perhaps one person or a smaller group of people. So that is the end of my presentation, and we do have about 15 minutes now for question and answer. Cheryl, how would you like to handle this?
Can I talk yet?
Yes.
Okay. I was looking and I didn't see any questions, but I'm not sure if anybody could submit any questions. So, Lisa, the way that they ask questions, do they select that raise the hand if they have any questions?
No, they just load their question in the Q&A panel, and it'll
okay. Okay. Do we have any questions at this point? I don't see any in there, do you? Oh.
We've got a question from Ryan. Ryan, can you type?
And Jamie Johnson said hello.
Very good.
Just real quick while we're waiting on the questions to be loaded, just want to remind everyone that the recording and the PDFs will be on the 311 Synergy group in the webinar section, and it will contain the preferred PDF that Corey had, where you can actually see some of the questions that we weren't able to see on the slides today. All right.
Thanks, Cheryl.
Do you see that question?
I'm seeing the question from Ryan. I'm interested in learning how important the IVR capabilities are for a 311 system. What I would tell you is it depends on how you want to use the IVR system, and you have to talk about that internally. I do know, though, that in Durham, North Carolina, when their Park and Recs department implemented a very well-designed IVR system, they reduced the number of phone calls that the department was receiving by half. So they went from about 16,000 phone calls on an annual basis to about 8,000 phone calls on an annual basis. And part of that was that they designed the IVR to handle those frequently asked questions that didn't need further clarification. And I can't give you an example of one of those questions off the top of my head, but I would tell you, like for snow updates in the winter, I think IVRs can be used effectively for that. Anything where there's repetitive information that lots of people are going to be asking for, I think you can use an IVR for that purpose.
For library locations, for recreation center locations, times, everything, that's what a lot of the cities use their IVR for as well. So I see, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Ryan's next question, should we allow calls to come into one person who has access to the knowledge base or give citizens the option to go directly to a department? I would say if you're going to go to a centralized customer service system, all of the questions need to be going through that system. Now, there are different structures or different models that you can use. And I know Urbandale, Iowa, this was several years back, but when they implemented a CRM, it was used by all the different departments. So if somebody in Park and Rec had a question that came in that really should have gone to Public Works, all of that information is recorded. It then goes over to Public Works, and Public Works knows what's been happening. So it's a more diffuse model for a CRM system, but that is a possibility too. But I think part of what you're trying to do is capture all that information in a central location. It feeds into consistency in terms of responses, because you don't want citizens saying, well, I heard this, and another citizen saying, I heard this.
I agree. Centralized is so much better. If you get, I think they were all saying, if you get all the support from, the higher up down, you will have quite a bit of support from all the different departments, and they will want you to handle all of the day-to-day questions so that they can concentrate on the more important or, necessary things that the city needs at that point.
Yeah. The nice thing about a centralized customer service system, whatever model you would choose to adopt for your community, not only do you have that centralized data, but you all, as I say, you also have the consistency in responses, and people begin to trust local government, I think, a little bit more.
Any other questions out there?
So,
all right.
Okay, well, if I could do just a quick little plug, Cheryl, before we let people go. You'll see there are two websites that I have listed on that final page. The resources page has a number of different reports that we did from our National 311 and Customer Service Technology project from 2006 till 2011. All of the publications there are free, so feel free to go and download those. There's some wonderful case studies. There's a primer on walking you through a 311 system, those kind of things. And then if you need more support than that, we also have the 311 Technical Assistance Program. And as Rose said, I'm more than happy to talk with you and answer any questions that you might have that come up separately.
Ryan, the question that you have, did Corey just answer it by referring you to those resources? Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Corey.
Okay.
All right.
Well, and thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for presenting today, and thank you to Rose. She's not on anymore, but we really appreciate both of you presenting today. It's great information for cities with 311, as well as those cities who are interested in establishing it. Again, take a look at the 311 Synergy Group found on LinkedIn. I looked just a little bit ago, there's approximately 249 members from all over the U.S. as well as Canada. We'll have another webinar in November. I believe it's on November 20th, and this time it will be at 10 a.m. Central Time, and the topic will be announced later on that website. And don't forget about the next 311 Synergy Conference, which is in Charlotte, North Carolina, April 26th through the 28th. We look forward to seeing you all there. Thank you for joining us today to hear Is 311 Right for Your City? Have a great day.
Bye.